All right, let's cut the crap. How many of you out there actually believe the shit you see on the news? Anyone? Yeah, didn't think so. Seems even a president can get pissed off at the media enough to start his own damn news channel. We're diving deep into this thing called Real News Update, Trump's own little propaganda machine. It ran from 2017 to 2020, hosted mostly by Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law. Imagine Fox News on steroids, but with more family drama. So was this just Trump blowing smoke, trying to make himself look good, or did he have a point about the mainstream media being full of asshats?
To understand Real News Update, you have to look at the political climate at the time. Trump was constantly battling the media, calling them fake news, and claiming they were out to get him. There was this growing distrust of traditional news outlets, especially among his supporters.
So he tapped into this pre-existing anger and distrust, basically saying, screw those guys, I'll give you the real news.
Exactly. And that's where Laura Trump comes in. She was a key player in the 2016 campaign, especially in North Carolina. After the election, she became one of the most vocal critics of the mainstream media, constantly calling them out for what she saw as bias against Trump.
She was like his attack dog, but with better hair.
So how did this Real News Update thing actually work? Was it just some dude with an iPhone in his basement?
Not quite. They filmed it in Trump Tower, funded by his campaign. It was slickly produced with graphics and music, trying to look like a legitimate news program. They had other hosts besides Laura Trump, like Kayleigh McEnany, who later became White House press secretary.
Talk about a promotion, from spouting bullshit on the internet to spouting bullshit from the White House podium. But what did they actually talk about on this show? Was it all just Trump praising propaganda?
It was definitely heavily slanted in Trump's favor. They focused on what they called his achievements and victories, downplaying any negative news or criticism. They often cherry-picked data to present a rosy picture of his presidency. So classic spin. Making the numbers say whatever the hell you want them to say. But did anyone actually buy this crap?
You'd be surprised. Trump's base ate it up. They saw it as an alternative to the fake news they believed was being pushed by the mainstream media.
It's like they created their own little reality bubble where Trump could do no wrong.
In a way, yes. And this is where it gets really interesting. Real News Update wasn't just about promoting Trump's agenda. It was also about attacking his opponents and undermining trust in legitimate news sources. They constantly accused mainstream media outlets of lying, distorting facts, and being controlled by special interests.
So basically they were playing the same game as everyone else, just with a different spin.
Exactly. And that's what makes Real News Updates so fascinating. It's a perfect example of how information warfare is waged in the 21st century. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping public perception, and creating your own reality.
And in Trump's case, that reality was pretty fucked up. But that's a story for another time. For now, let's take a closer look at the tactics they used on this show to manipulate the news.
One of their favorite tactics was cherry-picking data. They'd highlight economic numbers that made Trump look good, ignoring any negative indicators. For example, they'd brag about the stock market going up, but wouldn't mention the growing national debt.
So basically, they were just showing you the good shit and hiding the bad shit. Classic propaganda move.
Exactly. And they were masters of using loaded language. They described Trump's policies in glowing terms while painting his opponents as radical, socialist, or even dangerous.
It's like they were trying to scare the shit out of people into supporting Trump.
Fear is a very powerful motivator, and Real News Update played on people's fears constantly. They talk about illegal immigration, terrorism, and crime in a way that made it seem like the country was on the verge of collapse.
So they're basically creating this us versus them mentality, where Trump and his supporters were the good guys, fighting against the evil forces trying to destroy America.
Exactly. And they were very good at using anecdotal evidence to support their claims. They'd interview people who claimed to have benefited from Trump's policies, even if those stories weren't representative of the overall impact of those policies.
So they'd show you some farmer who is supposedly doing great thanks to Trump's tariffs, even though most farmers were actually getting screwed.
Exactly. It's a very effective way to bypass critical thinking and appeal to people's emotions. And they were masters of it.
So how the hell do we fight back against this kind of bullshit? Are we just doomed to be bombarded with propaganda from every direction?
Not necessarily, but it takes effort. We have to be more critical of the information we consume. We can't just blindly accept what we see on social media or hear from our favorite talking heads.
But we need to be more like skeptical assholes.
In a way, yes. We need to question everything. Who's saying it? What's their motivation? What evidence do they have to support their claims? And most importantly, what are they not telling us?
So basically, we need to be our own damn fact checkers.
Exactly. And that's not easy. It takes time and effort. But it's more important now than ever before. We're living in an age of information overload, where it's harder than ever to separate truth from fiction.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack full of bullshit.
It can feel that way sometimes. But there are tools and resources that can help us. Fact-checking websites like Snopes and PolitiFact can be useful. And there are media literacy organizations that teach people how to spot misinformation and propaganda.
So there's hope. We're not all doomed to become mindless zombies swallowing whatever crap gets fed to us.
No, we're not. But we have to be vigilant. We have to be active participants in the information ecosystem, not passive consumers. We have to be willing to challenge our own biases and be open to different perspectives.
So no more living in echo chambers where everyone agrees with us all the time.
Exactly. We need to get out of our comfort zones and engage with people who have different views than our own. That's how we learn and grow.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is work, but it's important work. The future of our democracy depends on it.
Damn, that got serious. But I guess you're right. If we don't start taking this shit seriously, we're all fucked. So what's the takeaway here? What can we do to protect ourselves from this kind of manipulation?
It's all about being a smarter, more critical consumer of information. You have to be aware of the tactics that are being used to manipulate you.
So like what? Don't trust anything you see on the internet.
Not exactly, but you do need to be skeptical. Don't just take things at face value. Look for evidence. Consider the source check for bias.
So basically be a pain in the ass.
Pretty much. Ask yourself, who benefits from this information? What's their agenda? And if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb for pretty much everything in life.
Absolutely. And remember, even seemingly credible sources can have biases. It's important to diversify your information intake. Don't just rely on one news outlet, one website, or one social media feed.
So get out of your echo chamber and see what the other side is saying, even if it makes you want to puke.
Exactly. Expose yourself to different perspectives, even if they challenge your beliefs. You might be surprised by what you learn.
Or you might just end up more pissed off than you were before.
That's a possibility too. But hey, at least you'll be informed.
All right, so let's wrap this up. We've talked about how Real News Update was basically a propaganda machine designed to make Trump look good and attack his enemies. We've talked about the tactics they use to manipulate people, like cherry-picking data, using loaded language, and appealing to fear.
And we've talked about how important it is to be critical of the information we consume, to question everything, and to diversify our sources.
So what's the bottom line here? What do you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I want them to understand that we are all constantly being bombarded with information, and much of it is designed to manipulate us. We need to be aware of this, and we need to develop the skills and tools to protect ourselves.
So be skeptical, do your own research, and don't be a sheep.
Exactly. Think for yourself, question authority, and never stop learning.
And that's your deep dive for today. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and for the love of all that is holy, stay informed.